Okay, cool. Awesome. Glad we're all here. Just a quick icebreaker for all of you. Just shout out in the chat where you're connecting from. So if you're from, the States, let us know what state you're in or a city that you're in. We want to know who is connecting with us today. Toronto, awesome. I'm also in Toronto right now. Well, technically Vaughan, but yes, in the Toronto area. New York City, Boca Raton, NYC. Okay, a lot of New York people here. Indiana, awesome. Watching from Texas. Okay, we're super international here. Chicago. Cool. And just to start off this event, I'm just going to do a quick intro to myself. I am the co founder of the Collective Studio. My name is Melanie. As you've already discovered, I'm based in Toronto area in Canada. And my other co founder, Claire, she's also based in the New York, New Jersey area. I've been a freelance graphic designer for about like 7 to 8 years, and then I pivoted to become a UX product designer. And I also facilitate design thinking workshops through the Collective Studio as well. So, for those of you that are a little bit new or unfamiliar with the Collective Studio, we run these design sprints that last for about 2 weeks where we help a group of designers to collaborate together and solve problems for users and help them to develop the communication skills, collaboration skills. It's sort of like a mini hackathon where you get to design wireframes and stuff like that. So, yeah, we've been doing that for about 2 years. Other than that, we also do workshops and webinars like this, uh, where we ask professionals to come in and talk about their area of skills and expertise. And yeah, Koyel kind of approached us. We had a good connection, and we're happy to have her here so that she could share her story with you. It would definitely help you out if you're a UX researcher or looking to improve your skills. She has a lot of stories and personal experience that will help you to understand a little bit better about what you're going to be facing in the real world. So without further ado, I will leave it to Coyle to introduce herself and to also begin her talk. Hey, Coyle. Not sure if we lost your audio, but we're not able to hear you. If you're using a mic that you plug in by USB, sometimes if the wire's a bit loose, it will stop working. So just make sure you got everything connected. Oh, using AirPods. Okay. Hopefully the AirPods are fully charged. Okay. Can anyone hear Coil, or is it just me? Nope, no one can hear. Okay, so Coil, if you look at your audio settings, maybe check to see what your mic is set to. Or if you could use your laptop mic, that's also a good idea because it might be more stable that way. Okay. Okay. No problem. You can rejoin the session and hopefully it'll work. In the meantime, kind of curious to hear from the audience. What area of UX are you looking to get a job in? Like, are you interested in UX research, UI design? Maybe you're interested in being a developer. Oh, congratulations, Stephen. You got an internship as a UX researcher. Well done. Awesome. And Hypatia says UX research, and they're taking a research course on Coursera. They're also interested in data visualization. That is another area that I think is a key skill that people sometimes overlook is data visualization. Um, yeah, because if you're presenting your findings to other researchers, there needs to be like a compelling way to visually explain that stuff. So, um, there's so much to learn about data visualization. It's not as simple and straightforward as we think it is. Um, okay, so Koyel is gonna come back. So it looks like they're setting up their audio settings. Thanks for being patient, guys. Super awesome. And then what? Okay, okay, we could hear you. Yeah, sorry about that. We don't know why it was causing you issues. Hopefully things are okay now. Are you able to share your screen? If not, I could. Okay, awesome. We could see it. Perfect. You're doing amazing. So, would you like to introduce yourself first? Yep, I could hear you.
Another important question that sets up the context is when you are being asked to do research, which product cycle is it going to inform? It's very important to know this because this is going to affect everything you do, how you do the research and how you report the research. And another reality is also that you will be the person who will be facing users, and oftentimes you are representing the business to the user. So there has been so many times when research participants have talked about issues that I haven't asked them about. That is not really the focus of the research project I was doing, because to them, that's the only time they're facing a human from Google. So, your challenge is also in delivering these user stories to the stakeholders in a manner that's deemed to be relevant and interesting. So you will basically be a bridge between people, users, and cross-functional stakeholders. The early on you understand the context and design the context, the better. So after designing the context, the next job, of course, is staging the content. And by this, I'm going to talk about all of these in greater detail. So don't be overwhelmed if you find all of this a bit new. Staging the content means basically doing the research, conducting research. And we'll talk about how to conduct research and manage stakeholders throughout this whole process. So, this stage involves conducting informational interviews with business stakeholders and searching the company's knowledge bases or research repositories to find relevant information so that you don't waste time and money to do research that's already been done, is redundant or not relevant. Because sometimes when the you know the drive to find the sacrificial goat comes, sometimes it's the researcher. It's like, are you doing relevant research? Are you doing useful research? So you need to make sure you are doing useful research. And the first step is see what has already been done so that you don't repeat. Um, and talk to other researchers within the organization who can provide more context to a new research project if you're doing it new, or how you can do so. Always talk to other researchers. They are your buddies in the process. And then you become ready to conduct the research. The third step involves diversifying the authorship of the content being created with cross functional stakeholders. So basically, this means contextualize your research questions within business priorities by asking your stakeholders what they hope to learn from this research. Is their goal to analyze user problems and pain points? Do they need to map the opportunity space? Do they need to find a space before launching a product? Find out which part of the product development process your research will inform. This is very key. And sometimes, let me tell you from experience, sometimes people don't know. Like sometimes designer team doesn't know. But you have to be a little bit persistent in trying to find out which product cycle it is. So frame your research plans and insights to help stakeholders build empathy throughout the entire process by involving and communicating with stakeholders at every stage, and pivot when necessary rather than falling into the sunk cost fallacy trap. Like that's called iterative research, right? So you need to, be in touch with the stakeholders all the time to do that iteration. So what you are essentially doing at this stage, by this stage, is that you are making your story into our story. It's no longer your research story that you are going to be telling. You will be telling others our story. And these little things make a huge difference. Just saying we did this and we have a problem in this sounds different than I did this research and problems as I found problem in this areas. So these are the big key steps. We are going to go deeper into this process, but these are the three big key ones. The TLDR tip is make the stakeholders part of your stories. Don't keep the stories separate. Okay. Um, Regarding storytelling, and I want to say this at the outset. How to do storytelling? You won't get it all after this webinar, or that book you read, or that course you take. Without any disrespect to the talents of you, none of us do. We get better with storytelling every day. And that's a story you should hold close because there's lots of hope in that story. Let me tell you that. So, storytelling is key to becoming a persuasive UXR. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. It's a very holistic process rather than compartmentalized, topics about storytelling stakeholders. That's not how it happens. So if you just think about it beyond UX, beyond webinars, persuasion to anything or anyone is rooted in trust. Persuasion is also rooted in storytelling, right? And one of the ways we show trust is when we just meet a stranger. When we just meet a stranger, one of the ways we show trust is through some ritual activities, like a handshake. So basically, we're telling someone we just met that before I build a relationship with you, I want you to know that I trust you. So the use of a handshake, for as a ritual greeting in human history, especially in Western history, is quite a recent one. And then there are theories as to why this particular ritual greeting was finalized upon. So one popular theory is that the gesture began as a way of conveying peaceful intentions. So, by extending their empty right hands, strangers could show that they were not holding weapons and bore no ill will towards one another. Another theory is that, or another story is that up and down motion of the handshake was supposed to dislodge any knives or daggers that might be hidden up in a sleeve. And another story was that explanation is that it's a symbol of good faith when making an oath or promise. When they clasped hands, people showed that their word was a sacred bond. So the handshake basically delivers an agreement of trust, of building a relationship. And this building of trust is different in different cultures. So Eskimos, for example, wouldn't use a handshake but rub noses together. Now, all of these changed during the pandemic with social distancing. Then the ritual became that when I keep a 6 feet of distance from you, I want to tell you that I bear no ill will towards you, no harm towards you, that I care about you, and that you can trust me. Just that 6 feet distance, right? So, point is, out of all of these stories, point is, trust is absolutely essential and needs to be established before you develop any relationship and tell any kind of story to anyone. And when you want to build trust, you want to know about the other person and you also want to tell them about yourself and establish that you are not an adversary but a partner geared towards the same goal. Um, to show that you mean no harm, you need to show that you are not on the opposite side, you are on the same side. And you can do this by following some rituals that I'm going to talk about in a moment. And feel free to change these rituals as you interact in your life with the stakeholders. The point of all this is you can be persuasive with your research story once you establish trust. So that means you have to talk and embody partnerships, not collaboration. So engaging in this language is also very important. You need to continuously invoke that you are partners moving towards a shared common goal. It's long term. Collaboration sounds short term. We're just doing it for the moment. So this is key to having a higher level in stakeholder engagement to the whole research process. So now we'll go deeper into the process of involving stakeholders and storytelling. So remember the first square you saw in the first early slides, that is design the context. We are entering that stage. So the first basic step is catch them early. And by this, I mean involve your stakeholders early. Have one-on-ones with your stakeholders and start with these basic questions when meeting stakeholders. What are their motivations and goals? What problems are they trying to solve by having you on the team? What's keeping them up at night? How can you solve these problems? Ask them what decisions do they need to make. This is absolutely, important. What decisions do they need to make? This ensures you're tying research to what they need to decide, understand, or do. When you ask stakeholders what questions they have, that is what they want to learn, and or ask them which part of the product development and your research will inform and impact, and then ask them what questions do they have for you? What do they want to learn? These questions become the outlines of the story you are going to tell when you are doing the share out of results. So always write down what answers you are getting by doing all of this informational. Make a note. That's going to be the outline of your research report, of your storytelling. Kick off and sync. That's staging the content. So now let all of this design the context part. Let all of that hard work come into fruition after you have drawn up your study plan and you know what you need to do and how it's valuable to the business and the stakeholders. Have a day set aside to kick off the research project to align understanding among all stakeholders. When you meet, you have the research meeting, you discuss the study plan, you discuss what you're going to do. No matter what others say, it's a good idea to discuss the elephant in the room and listen to each other. And your stakeholders will also benefit from it as you will. So, in person office settings, the space to be is already created for us, right? But most of us, we are working in remote or hybrid way of working, and the space has to be created by you. So it could be a Google space, Slack channel, Discord, or WhatsApp group, but create a space for all of you to be, with the primary objective being, keeping everyone on the same page with regular and consistent updates on the research project. Another equally important aspect in this process is connecting with each other through work and non-work means. So sometimes much better relationship and greater partnerships are forged not through work meetings, but say um, a volunteering activity of cleaning up a park or a space where engineers, backend developers, designers, and researchers, program managers all come together and help each other towards a common task or a common goal. And these exercises often help people have a better understanding of each other. So, by all means, if you can, try to arrange these exercises of connecting. Now, if you cannot do these, my advice would be to use the twilight zone of meetings when the meeting has started, but it hasn't really started. Like the first few minutes where people are dropping in, like what we had today, like first 12 minutes, all of this technological glitches. Use that time to talk about what you did last weekend, that show you were watching, what do you want to recommend others, make chit chats with people. Just get to know them, tell them about you. Tell them that way you're also showing people how you are similar or how you're different and interesting. That's very crucial to establishing trust. And share in that space that you have created, that online virtual space, which could be a Discord group or Slack or anything. So share every bottleneck you are facing in the study and how you are trying to solve them. Ask for help whenever possible. So, because there is no shame in asking for help, you are actually sharing your vulnerability and you are humanizing yourself when you are asking for help. And you also have a greater chance of solving a problem when you are giving others the chance to solve the problem. When you are asking for help, you are forging connections, right? You are having an experience together. You are already gaining in trust and you have a greater chance of being heard and taken seriously. So the next stage would be diversify inclusion. So once you establish your research protocol, which could be a Q&A deck or usability sessions or contextual evaluation, share this document with the stakeholders and ask them to have a look. They might come up with additional issues to go over, but they will like this opportunity to include anything that's crucial but was forgotten. Once you start on the data collection, include your stakeholders to be observers of the sessions. Now, this will serve two purposes. Your stakeholders will feel partnered and included because it's not your research project, it's everyone's. That's what I meant by diversifying authorship, right? And they will also get to know about the research practices and the depth and range you can go on. And this is a great space, trust me, to get early buy ins when they actually see you in action as a researcher. Share your recordings, notes, any records of data collection with the stakeholders. They might not be able to attend the data collection sessions due to their own busy schedules, but they will definitely appreciate them, not being an afterthought in inclusion. And they can have a look at the data when it's more comfortable for them. So, in every stage, you are showing them that you are thinking about them as users. Do a debrief. So you can do this after each session or in a periodic interval, like after 10 sessions or after each session or once a week. Just do whatever feels comfortable, but do a debrief session with the stakeholders. Now, for the purpose of this debrief would be to making sure everyone is on the same page and iterative development on improving research protocol, like including something or deleting something. And after the data collection, set a date. Thank everyone in being present during the data collection stage. Tell everyone you are going to take this much amount of time like 1 week or 2 weeks in data analysis, and you're going to do the share out on this particular date, invite every possible cross-functional stakeholders to the share out, especially those who are the key decision makers. Remember all that hard work you did before the study was, getting started? Now is the time to use those, hard work. So find out who are the key decision makers, include them. Whose input is absolutely necessary to move the project forward, include them in this particular, share out date. So have a look at the calendar and set the date accordingly. Only when you think about them can you expect them to think about you, right? And I learned it the hard way. In my initial research projects, I was basically doing my research and sharing out. And then I noticed something that the person, the UX strategist or the really key decision player, she's not able to come into those meetings because the meetings were set by someone, not by me. And it was not done. The meeting was set in a time where she would write in her calendar that she's not able to attend. And this was not done by malicious intent or anything. It was just an honest mistake, but this was happening. So once I understood that, I might not find a particular date in the next 1 month, but I still would, really try to align everyone's calendar and find a date when that particular key decision maker was able to be, present. So this is absolutely essential to forging connections, build networks, and make sure your research is getting the relevance it deserves. Now, before you present, share resources at least 24 hours ahead for pre-reads. If you can't do this for some reason, like, if you are still working on it of your share out, or you don't want to do this, assure them in the meeting that you're going to share the deck right after the share out. Link resources in the calendar invite, like the study plan or the study brief, anything that you have, link those in the calendar invite. And if you're sharing lots of data or doing a share out after a lot of time, you can consider doing and sharing a one pager, which is basically giving an abridged version of your research story, just the basic broad outlines for a quick feedback to the stakeholders. Share out date, build a bridge. Now, before you share all the exciting details of your research projects, and in that twilight zone of meeting, remember the first few minutes where everyone is waiting for everyone to arrive, build a bridge. Don't waste that time. Say something about your day or your life or that date or some trivia that connects you all to that research project or, just something about your day. The purpose is connecting and engaging. When you're not talking research, you just say something, people are more likely to listen to you. Now, once you get your stakeholders' attention, you are hooking them in. They are now listening to you, and you have persuaded them now to listen to you. Now, when starting the share out, set out expectations of what the audience can expect. Like every movie has a trailer, like every book has a blurb, every video has a video description that stokes audience's attention. Tell your stakeholders what they should expect and how listening into a presentation can help solve a design problem or an engineering problem or something. Give them the TLDR. So even if you know your stakeholders know what the research project is all about, it's important to do this at this stage. Tell them what to expect. And then give them a TLDR of the study. And this is a very essential step, the necessity of which we tend to gloss over. We don't give the TLDRs because we want to say key findings, top three key findings, or this is what I did. No, give them a TLDR. And I'll give you an example as to how it will help. So uh, I'm guessing, all of you at some point have probably browsed a recipe online. Have you? And if you remember what the recipe starts with, it doesn't start with step number one, take this pot and pan or, butter it or cut vegetables or whatever it is. It doesn't start with step number one. It starts with a picture of the end product, right? Then it sets out what you should do to arrive at that end product. That picture is the TLDR. So give your stakeholders a taste of what's to follow through a key finding crucial to the project, answering the key question. one line, one paragraph, key finding, key question. Okay. Remember, you had asked them what decision do they need to make. Now is the time to help them with that step. And this is how we are used to, process information nowadays anyway. We want to know what we're about to consume in the next 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 60 minutes. We want to know in one line. So nobody wants to be surprised. So do this. And frame this TLDR when you have completed the research report so that you have a very holistic, clear idea on your data analysis. And through doing all this, you are showing your stakeholders that you're thinking about them all along, them being your primary users at this point, and lay out expectations on whether you'll be taking questions all along. Some stakeholders prefer that, or would you prefer to do the Q&A after the session? You can say, I'm gonna, clarificatory questions are welcome, but I also want to make sure that I cover the length and breadth of the research. So big questions, I'm gonna do it later on. So whatever feels comfortable to you. And in the share out, while you present, use the headings to tell the story, like I did in this particular presentation. um, don't make them go through, go to the slide deck, go to the particular slide and see, okay, what's the story? No, give it out in the heading and show examples, highlight those examples, talk about them in your share out, visualize the data. We all process information differently, and some of us are more visual than others. So it's very important to give good data visualizations when trying to tell a good story. And also, this is really important, prepare the report as a document to be read later. Some stakeholders will want to come back to it later. So if you want to add details, add them on the presenter notes or comments, or just put it all on the slide deck. Leave time for discussion, ideally 15 to 20 minutes, and overall, just keep it very precise. State what's the problem, how did you solve it, what were some expectations, were those met? What's the critical input of this research? What's the key thing to consider? And how is it going to help the decision makers in getting to the path forward? Whatever you do, you are the hero, right? You are the one who is solving problems. You are the one who has to triumph in the end. So give stakeholders a true picture and not what you feel they want to hear. I think this is really important for research integrity, our integrity as researchers, our integrity and honesty as researchers. Tell them what, not what they want to hear. Sometimes I've seen researchers doing that, but not that's not how it should be. So in all circumstances, be true to research and be true to evidence. Evidence is your best friend when you need to be persuasive in research, and at the same time provide directions and counsels on the path forward. Like, you can't forget why you were there. You are there to help the business make more money. When businesses lose touch with their user base, they lose money, right? Now you are the bridge between user needs and business needs, and you really cannot tell stakeholders what they want to hear, but tell them what they need to hear. Record your share out so that those who cannot attend can see the recording later. It's just good practice. And herein too, you are telling others that you're thinking about them, and share user stories while you are doing the share out. User stories are good ways to foster a user centric culture and mindset among stakeholders. Share user stories or personas that capture the needs, behaviors, and motivations of your target users. And they could be short and simple statements that describes what a user wants to do, why, and how. What are their characteristics? What are their goals? What are their challenges? Sharing user stories go a long way in helping stakeholders empathize with the users, relate to their situations, and prioritize their needs. Um, Modulate your voice. So if you ever remember a good story, it's also because the tone that the story was related, that worked in delivering the story to you. So listen to your voice, practice hearing yourself aloud, and modulate your voice. I really can't emphasize this point more because, it's best not to talk in a voice that we wouldn't like listening. As they say, do unto others as they would do unto you. And don't speak in a monotone. Practice, right? Really, like practice, practice, practice. Practice makes everything better. and show why your work was, worth listening to you. If you lack the enthusiasm in your voice, you can't really expect others to be enthusiastic about your work, right? And share your vulnerabilities, your struggles, or anything you found interesting, or anything unanticipated through, light anecdotes or stories that made the research project worthwhile and memorable. And summarize and present like, it was the last presentation of your life. At the end of the presentation, don't thank people for listening to you. No, that's what every other researcher is doing. And, I don't think you really need to undersell yourself. The best way to do this, how to do the summary, is to think about any courtroom drama scene that you liked. Most memorable closing argument by that lawyer character. Think about that. And do a close by imagining yourself as the best lawyer you have ever seen in your life. Summarize by answering the questions of what was the problem or blocker or critical question, and how can you move forward, like that is what are your recommendations with respect to that and why. And this should be a very clear short summary. Summarize what you delivered and thank them for spending 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever the time is. Thank them for spending the time they spent with you. Treat the meeting as a conversation you had with your partners, where you told them about a story of a problem and how you can move forward from that problem. And you tell them you will see them in another research project. If you know what you are going to do next, mention that. Bonus tip: what if you had no engagement and no show or very little interest, share out in the Q&A? What if you feel your work wasn't appreciated in the share out? This happened to me once. So in that case, no need to take things personally, but get back to doing this one-on-ones. So schedule 15 minutes chats with those stakeholders. And what happened to me, it was an interesting project. It was like, very long awaited project. Everyone was waiting for it. We were facing some bottlenecks. It finally happened. And while I did the share out, it was in, sometime in the last week of January. After the share out, there was no questions or nothing from the stakeholders. And I was like, what the bleep just happened? So I did, one-on-ones with the stakeholders. And I found out that it wasn't really anything to do with the research. The Google layoffs had just happened, and people were anxious, people were worried, and they were just not, the right chirpy normal regular self. So this is sometimes it can happen for a very different reason, or sometimes it can happen with something that the stakeholders didn't get out of it. So it's a very good idea to do the one-on-ones. So ask them, what did they feel about the share out, that you are concerned about the non-engagement and was thinking about what you can do in this regard. That's what I did. And ask them what they could have appreciated. Sometimes they will come up with very good tips that you can incorporate into your future research. And that's how you're forming connections. You are telling them, oh, I'm actually taking in this tip or advice from you. I'm using it. I trust you. So ask them, is there anything you can do to improve your share outs? And always remember, this is an extremely brave act where you make yourself wide open to criticism, right? Um, so pat yourself on the back for it, because no growth can come without criticism. Now, research could be boring to anyone who is not a researcher, but you needn't be, right? Tell your research story like you were the boss of your life, because you truly are. If not, you should be. So, thank you for spending the last 40 minutes with me. I hope I was of help in getting some insight on how to manage stakeholders and storytelling. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And Koyel Ranu, I think there is only one Koyel Ranu on LinkedIn. And I would love to hear about your stories of how you are doing these. If you have any questions or comments, now is the time.
Yes, thank you very much, Koyel, for the presentation. I really appreciated this. And also, if you guys have questions for Koyel, feel free to unmute your mic. You could also shout out. If you prefer to use the text chat, also use the text chat as well. And I'm going to start with a question that was already asked during your session. I think
Mm-hmm.
Stephen asked if the slide deck is actually going to be available. I think they would like to look at it.
Yeah, I can make it available. Yeah, I'll share it with you, Melanie, and then maybe you can share it with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I could do that.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Coil? I'll give people time to think. I have a question, if you guys don't
Mm-hmm.
mind. I'm kind of curious to know what happens if, let's just say, you're working with a team of researchers and there's a conflict between not just the stakeholders, but the researchers themselves on what they interpret from the data. Like, how has that happened to you? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not just in data interpretation, but also in how we should do the data collection or the research question. Um, and this is pretty regular, right? This will happen in everyone's career, and the way to go through this is try communicate and try to see where they're coming from. Why are they finding it problematic? If they don't agree on the interpretation, just listen and ask them, okay, what is appearing problematic to you? And they will come up with the real reason. Oftentimes people don't come up with the real reason first time or the second time. um, and then that gives you some space to clear up some of the misunderstanding that you might have, or even clarify some of your concepts. And sometimes there are organizational culture that certain things are just not done. So then you can discuss how you can tackle the problem in a different way.
okay, thank you. And another follow up question I have is have you ever had to compromise on some of your own, I guess, decisions? Like, were there things that you didn't do that you wanted to do with your research, including how you want to present it?
I come from academia, so I think getting into UX research overall is a little bit of compromise on rigor, like how things are done in academia in terms of rigor, but the payoff is having more impact. Um, and getting things started, like getting the ball rolling, right? So that's a payoff that we all kind of agree upon when we come into UX research. Now, as far as having to do something that I really didn't want to do, Um, no, but I do know people who have to do this at times. Um, yeah, actually, once, yeah. Actually, once we had to include a protocol that, as researchers, I don't believe much in it. I don't think that's a very robust way of doing it, but it was coming to the stakeholder who was requesting it. Like the stakeholder really wanted that to be included. So yeah, sometimes if you have to go through some request that you personally or intellectually don't agree with something, don't take it personally. Include that, because as I mentioned, this is not your research, this is everyone's research. And maybe when you're doing the share out, you provide the nuance, or you provide, we need to take this with a pinch of salt because this is what has happened. Okay. I have had people ask me, I'm mostly doing qualitative studies. Sometimes people would ask me, so what's how many people actually went for this option? And I tell them it's a non-probability sample. I really can't give you a percentage. And they will be like, oh, but please, can you give an idea? I'm like, that idea will be very different when I go pick up another sample. So you need to explain why you are saying something, why you are holding your ground. Sometimes people ask questions because they don't understand the backstory, or they don't have the methodological background that you might have. So yeah, it's little compromises along the way. Always try to see where the other person is coming from.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And Hypatia also has a question. They also have a compliment for you. They said thank you for the presentation. And their question is, do you use data visualization tools to present your results? And she says some people are visual learners. So she wants to know,
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you go about sharing visuals or creating them?
Yeah, that's I wanted to emphasize that's a lifelong process. I think because I think I am also a very visual person. Um, so I don't use any tools other than I do most of my share outs on the Google Slides. So no, I can't remember any specific tool rather than other than the one that is already given on the share outs.
Okay.
I mean
So,
on the slides.
okay, gotcha. And I'm also kind of curious as well, like when it comes to academic research, are there different data visualization tools that researchers would use opposed to what was used for, stakeholder presentations and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because in research, it's basically cleaned up tables. Like in terms of data visualization, it's basically cleaned up data tables. Like if I do a log linear regression analysis or anything like that, which I used to do before, hardcore quant stuff, that would be the data visualization. There would be no visualization in the qualitative slide, qualitative part, other than putting up a quote on the document. So here on the data visualization part, if you really want to focus on a particular quote, then put it really on big font, highlight it. And I use several ways to depict a story visually. Sometimes I would put create a scale. If I want to see users are falling different ways in different scale, I would create a scale on the slide deck. But yeah, in academia, there is like zero data visualization at the compared to the level it happens in UX research.
Okay, thanks for that. And Etta says, thank you so much for the presentation. I learned a lot of valuable information. Thank you, Etta. And Stephen Ho says, what has been the most common pitfall to avoid that you have experienced when presenting slide decks to different stakeholders, like executives or developers?
Um, Most common pitfall to avoid. I think what I used to struggle with. I'll tell you what you struggle with. I'm not a designer, so sometimes my template would be really different. So by the time I finish the slide, I would be like, I'm kind of bored with making the same thing again and again. Let me try a different template. So the most common pitfall to avoid is don't keep things very distracting. Like don't keep things variable. Keep things minimalistic so that your research shines, your research comes across, and not that cute icon you wanted to put on there, to tell a, trying to tell a good story. So make your slide deck functional. More than pretty, just keep it clean. Make your slide deck functional because you want the stakeholders to focus on what you have to say, not how good you are in understanding and using colors or icons or that cute picture.
Okay, thank you for that. And we're just going to wait for anyone else to formulate a response.
Yeah. And I also want to say, like, for to have a different cover all the points, like Stephen, I'm answering still answering a question. So cover all the point because you don't know what the UX designer knows. You don't The executive wouldn't know what the UX designer know. The developer might not know what the PM knows. So cover all the points. Like what is the need of doing the research? What is the context? So cover all the points on your slide decks. Context, goal, research question, and then move on to the key findings so that they have a very holistic perspective. If somebody doesn't know what was the point of doing this research, they can know the point of doing this research.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I
And
see Hebe's question.
yes,
Um, What would you do when you're in this situation? Most of us tend to think our ideas are valuable and we want our ideas to be utilized, leveraged in a project. Like we tend to be obsessed with a seemingly good idea we come up with, but a project always has a certain budget, yes. And depends on how much the stakeholders are on board with the researchers. Only certain ideas and solutions are then used. When you don't feel your input is being accepted while you believe it would solve the problem, what would you do? Gulp down, gulp down, and suck it up. Should you abandon the work that is not accepted by a crowd? Yeah. So I would, reiterate, we are there employed by the business. So if the business stakeholders don't believe in a particular research method I am proposing, I would do one-on-ones, or three people in a room, or whatever works. If they're really tied up with time, I would do three people in a room with me, or four. Get the key players and try to see what is going on, or have one-on-ones. But sometimes it will happen when there is no budget, or the product line is not going to be move forward, or the stakeholders are just not finding it from a marketing perspective um, any good to invest in that particular product, but you see users have problems with that product. In this, you can only make a note. You can only provide the data. You can only provide the evidence that this particular thing has this problem. We can best solve this problem by doing this particular research. But if you say we don't go forward, that's okay. But I just want this point to be on paper. You don't leave the organization, but you leave pursuing something that is not going to lead to anywhere. You want stakeholders to be on your side. You don't want to fight your battles, big battles with them. Um, did I answer your question, Hibi, or you want something else? And I would also like to mention, sometimes I have come up with research, like, because we always end up with surplus data, right? Especially qualitative research. So sometimes I have created two or three reports out of a single research project. Um, and then, based on the request of the stakeholders, of course, and then you might feel that they are not interested in it, but it might be that they are, but they are not putting their attention on that particular thing at the moment, but they might. They do have plans on it, going forward. They might have their attention on it like 2 or 3 months down the line. So, Mayor. Okay. What are the biggest tips to be successful in UX researchers, or to be successful as a UX researcher? Um, of course, you need to know about research, and of course, you need to read certain books and get the lingo. But in my experience, it really helps to be present in meetings. I know this is not what you were expecting to hear. I used to hear this when I started as UX researcher, that 90% of the job is meetings, and I used to hate this reality. I'm like, why? I hate meetings. But you learn a lot from meetings. You learn how the PMs are thinking. You learn how other researchers are thinking. You learn um, where the funding is going to come from, and how are things happening on the tech side. What are the problems engineers are having? So try to attend and have an overall sense. And it's not essential, to understand everything at the first time. I didn't. When I was in a when I was in a company before Google, where everyone spoke engineering, I didn't understand a thing of what was being said in the first few meetings, but I kept attending them. Um, so it's okay if you don't understand thing. You will get better in understanding as you keep attending them, and then you can ask people. People generally love to be helpful. So if you can't understand something, ask them. Oh, I was trying to understand this phrase. Do you have 5 minutes for a quick chat? If you want to explain to me what this thing is, you know. Yeah, master the art of enjoying meetings. Yeah, have some stress balls that those help with anything.
Yeah, I'm also curious to know, how do you stay engaged in these meetings? Like, how do you get the most of it if you're new and this is sort of like something completely alien to you before?
Um, for me, I'm not a person. I'm a very introvert and shy kind of person, but and for that reason maybe, or for some other reason, I used to not put up my camera on. But I think that's something that even if you hate doing, that might help you keep engaged, because when you have your camera on, you have to appear interested, right? There's no way that you can take a nap or look at your phone or do that thing you want to do, get going on a work you're doing. So you have to, appear interested, you have to appear engaged. So put your camera on. That also helps to see others that you are present in the room, and they can see your reaction. And when you have to pretend something, you might as well do the real thing, right? Instead of pretending you are engaged, um, just try to be engaged. I mean, there's no easy way. Sometimes things are boring. Just admit that those are boring. But this is where I'm drawing my getting my bills paid. This is bringing in money. This is my job. Pull up your pants and do it.
Absolutely. Thanks for answering that.
Yep.
Or
Mm-hmm.
Hypatia says, "Fake it till you make it."
Take it
Hey,
till you make it. Yeah, that's nice.
yeah, for me, I have like a lot of social anxiety. So, like, yes, there's different ways to cope with like socializing and stuff like that, but there's
Yeah,
different ways around
yeah.
it. And mindset is one of the bigger things that is like easier to
Mm-hmm.
change than we actually think. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, thanks for answering our questions. It's about 1:07 p.m. Eastern. This has been a really great session. We had a lot of questions asked. Hopefully, you guys have more questions. If you do, please share them right now before we come to a close. And in the meantime, I could also share Koyel's LinkedIn so that you could follow her. There you go. And as for the slides, I'll update everyone on this. As soon as I get a link from Koyel that will give you permissions to see, I could just post it in the announcements channel. And also, before you go, one last thing. If you haven't donated to the Collective Studio, please consider it because we are trying to keep this community open and free for people to join. We want to make sure that we're reserving software to use for design sprints so that you guys have a chance to practice using professional tools and stuff like that. So, the money that you donate to us helps us make this happen and it helps to keep the website running as well. So, if we all kind of chip in, this will help us in keeping this community the way that it is. Yeah, so if you got value from this, definitely just give us a little tip. And we will make use of that for research as well as development of everything that we do here. Thank you. And yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
it. That's all I have to add. If you have any more questions that are maybe deeper and you want to have a discussion, feel free to just, connect with Coil and she could help you.
Yeah,
Alrighty.
yeah.
Thanks,
Anyone
guys.
having any questions, connect with me. And yeah, thank you so much for guys, um, for this conversation. I really enjoyed my time here.
We enjoyed having you here too. Hope we could do this again later. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Bye bye.
Bye.